Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. It's such a pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Maybe you could just give a brief introduction to this incredible series, The Gold, for people who don't know anything about it. What can they expect?
The Gold is a really fast-paced, character-driven series that is about a huge, like the biggest the UK has ever seen, gold heist which happened in 1983, where a bunch of South London robbers broke into a place where they were just going to nick some cash and then ended up finding £26 million worth of gold bars, popping that in their van, and then yeah, having to work out how to get that back into the system. And there's a whole string of criminals, and it follows loads of those different characters actually, and then also the police, and trying to work out what happens. That they're sort of like on their heels, but not quite getting there. It's really good. The actual story, like it goes on for years and years and years and years.
Yeah,
And
and I,
I
I don't know whether
don't
it's,
accept.
I don't know if it was my own ignorance or whether, in general, people just aren't that aware of this story, which seems incredible, considering the amount of gold that they managed to get in the heist and the fact that it completely changed, the British criminal system and set off things about money laundering. So how aware were you of the original story and how much kind of research did you have to do before getting involved with the series?
So I didn't know that much about the original story at all. I didn't really know anything. My parents did though. I can remember talking to my mum about it and my dad about it, and everyone seemed to know all about it. And so that was a really good bit of research as well. And I can remember sort of having a bit of a like fact off with my dad about who knew more about what. Well, I was like, well, that's actually not quite right because um but yeah, there's so much information out there as well. And I think the writer Neil has been really accurate in what he's kept in. Obviously, like lots of it is a dramatization, all of it's dramatization, but there are some really interesting bits in there that like the people that Mickey McAvoy's wife, and then also the women he was having an affair with. He bought them both houses just like down the road from each other while he was in prison, which is ridiculous. And one of them had two dogs named Brinks and Matt, and they were trying to like act as if they were innocent. It's insane. But there are lots of really interesting little bits of information. Neil was really good at finding.
Mm. What can you tell us specifically about your character of Marnie? And I know you had a memoir to go off, which must have been a fantastic way to kind of get into that character, short of actually kind of sitting down and meeting her. So, what was your perspective on her, and kind of how did you prepare to play her?
Um, well, I think Marnie is the things that I understood about her from her memoir is that she had a really tough start to life, and she works really hard, and she is really loyal, and she really loved John a lot, and they had a very tricky relationship, but really did love John a lot. And I think they both come from such a difficult background that by the time we meet them, what's at stake? I think the driving thing for her is like, I can't. I mean, I don't know because I haven't spoken to her, but what I took from her memoir and then used when I was thinking about it is sort of like, I can't go back to that. I don't want to go back to that.
Mm.
And her sort of having to manage this difficult situation that she's in and really loving this person and not believing that they could have done this thing that they're accused of. I mean, the journey is really, really insane. And I think Tom Cullen, who plays John, just does it so well. And I know, I feel like their relationship is really solid and bits. So to see it tested was for me really heartbreaking. It felt really, I was really affected by how they sort of like come together and then there's something in between them again and then they sort of come together again.
And does it kind of add an extra layer? I don't know if responsibility is the right word, but when you are playing a character that's a real life person, I guess, wanting to, get it just right in terms of how you're portraying them. And was there an opportunity to meet her? Was that on the cards at any point, or did you think that that was going one step too far?
I no, I didn't meet her. I think I had so much information, so it didn't feel like it was hugely necessary. I don't know if I was in that position. I'm not sure how much I would want to talk to someone who was sort of going, because I mean, if you read the memoir, their relationship later on is not, it's very difficult. So it's definitely something that needed to be handled sensitively. And I think the way it's been written is it's not so much dragging her, like bringing up lots of her stuff. It's more sort of how the crime affected their relationship, and it's more about their relationship necessarily than about her and who she is. And if that makes any sense, I think it's a difficult line to tread, but I definitely wanted to be respectful, because obviously it would have been a really difficult thing to go through in real life.
And this cast is just amazing. We were just talking a second ago there about, each time a new character comes on screen, it's like, oh, and it's him, and it's her, and it's him. And it's kind of like a bit of a who's who, in terms of British talent. What was it like being on the set with all these people from Hugh Bonneville, Dominic, and of course, opposite Tom Cullen? It must have been a lot of fun. I don't know how much time you all got to spend together, but it must have been an amazing set of people to work with.
I mean, they're great. Yeah, everyone was incredible. It was, I think, at the read through, going around the table, that was a real moment. I didn't get to see anyone really apart from Tom, which was more than enough for me. He's wonderful. But I think sometimes we'd be on location in the same place or something, and I think I saw like Sean Harris wandering around a village once and was like, wow. And you'd sort of meet people at the coffee table, and they'd be so friendly, and everyone's great. Watching it now that I'm only halfway through at the moment myself, but watching it's really, really great, because like Ruth Bradley, who plays Dominic Cooper's wife in it, I've sort of known for ages, but haven't actually watched her in anything. And I watched it and I was like, oh my gosh, she's incredible. She's incredible. I'm watching it and I think everyone is just doing such a beautiful job.
And the other thing I love about it, because even though it's only 40 years ago, I mean, it's almost like a period set piece, because you realize that the fashion and everything, and, mobile phones and things like, actually is quite different from where we are today, and
Yeah.
the hair and the costumes and everything. So was that kind of a fun aspect of it as well, kind of like really leaning into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to give any spoilers, but there's bits where, they're waiting for newspapers. They're in Spain and they're waiting for newspapers getting from the UK news, getting from the UK to Spain, and then someone in Spain reading it. Takes 2 or 3 days. So there's a huge bit of news that we don't find out days and days after it happens, and because we're in Spain at that point. And I can remember thinking, God, that seems like a totally alien concept. Now if something happens, it's a BBC News app like pinging constantly, everything so right in your face all the time, whereas it seems like, things like reading the news or finding out that your husband's going to be arrested. It's like, I love that she has that 3-day grace period while they're on holiday, waiting for that.
And what I think is really interesting about the story as well is obviously it's got kind of the pace and intrigue of kind of a crime thriller. But there's also lots of kind of other issues that come out, and there's a lot in there about class divides, and kind of how it is. You end up sort of rooting, it's kind of the underdogs fighting back a bit. And of course, different in the 80s as to now, but that's something that's still very prevalent. And then there's a lot also about kind of women's role, whether it's Charlotte Spencer's characters, trying to make her way in a very male-dominated police force, or the partners of the criminals, like in the case of Marnie and their role. So there's lots of other things that come out. It's not just a kind of entertaining thriller.
Yeah, there's very, very strong themes that come out through the writing constantly throughout. And I think nearly every character has a bit where they sort of say their story or what they've had to work through in order to get to where they are. And I think that's it, is everyone has had to work really hard to get to where they are at that time. I mean, apart from people like Ruth Bradley's character, like I was saying, who just have it. And it's nice having that running through for sure. And also with Charlotte Spencer, what's interesting, what's with Charlotte's character, it's like it's not just that she's a woman, it's also the class thing as well. And here she is doing an incredible job and having to fight really hard for it. I think Marnie and John sort of represent more like rural areas, like not London. It feels like they're a bit of a sort of breath of fresh air, but even them, they've had to sort of really, really work hard to get to where they are. So yeah, that's definitely a theme that runs throughout.
And what do you think overall people are going to take away from watching it? Because I mean, I haven't got through all of it yet, and I just want to binge watch it all.
Yes.
I think it's kind of endless sort of appetite for these sorts of shows, but it's just so well done, isn't it? And it's so engrossing. So there's, and then the fact that it is a true story, I think kind of makes it time with people even more. I'm thinking about, yeah, like every piece of gold jewelry might have a little bit of the gold from this heist in, is kind of an amazing thing to think about.
Yeah, I think people will leave it with a lot of information, a lot of, I don't know, hopefully sort of a sense of rooting for everyone, like you've been saying. There is that weird sense of really rooting for all the criminals as well. And yeah, an interest for more of the story, hopefully.
And in terms of your career, what have been some of the highlights apart from this show, things you've done so far? And, what have you got coming up after it?
Highlights of my career and coming up after it. I've got a really lovely film called Lola, which should be coming out soon, which is like a beautiful shot on film, black and white, indie. Like that's the real passion project. That should be coming out in UK cinemas soon, I think. And then highlights of my past. I mean, I think I've been very lucky. I've had loads of. It feels like everything's been quite varied, and I've had a lot of different challenges for lots of different reasons. But I think highlights are things like Crooked House with Glenn Close and Prime Suspect, like leading a series. The challenge of that is huge. Those sorts of things, I think. I've been very lucky.
Do you have any kind of bucket list things that you'd love to do, directors you'd like to work with, or genres you'd like to try?
I mean, Greta Gerwig would be the dream. I mean, that would be the absolute dream. And I'd love to do some theatre. To be honest, I just like to keep being challenged.
Maybe if she does Barbie too, you can.
Oh my God, I'd love it. I'd love it. Yeah, get me in, please.
Well, it's been absolutely brilliant to speak to you. Thank you so much for sharing all that with me. And I can't wait for everyone else to blast through the gold, as I'm sure they will. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to hear all of those lovely things that you've said about it as well.
Thanks a lot. Lovely to chat to you too. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Cheers, Sarah.